Join us as we dive deep into the mystical and esoteric with Amanda Mariamne Radcliffe. She's an artist, writer, mystic, muse, high priestess, and bishop in the French Gnostic Church. Amanda is an esoteric consultant for the Hollywood film Color Out of Space and shares her profound experiences with the Black Madonna, the feminine divine, and her work in French esotericism. In this conversation with my great friend Jean-Luc, Amanda talks about her transformative encounters, her ancestral connections, and the rising public interest in the occult, and how it's all tied to ufology. We talk about the White Lady, the Dragon Court, and many other topics that some would say are off limits. So, kick back, relax. This is a really interesting talk.
Mr. John. This is John. John, this is Amanda.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Cool. Jean-Luc's been telling me that you're awesome, and he's a great judge of character. So whenever he says that, I completely believe him 1,000%. So
there you go. Yeah, I think Amanda's got a lot in common with us, to be honest. Like, obviously in a bit of a different vein, but like very similar experiences and interests. So yeah, hopefully we should have a fun and interesting conversation.
Well, we've all had experiences with a White Lady, which we know that, right?
I didn't know that until I watched one of your videos last night.
Oh yeah, mine was, I don't know, I still keep toying with that whole thing about my experience with it. And I had a brother of mine, that John Gilbert, we just did like 2 podcasts together, and off the record, he told me, he said, it's kind of interesting because you refused the sword. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, in the biblical context, how the devil took Jesus up and said, all this could be yours, right? And just everything, this could be all yours, tempted him for, the high mountain. I can't remember what it was, but, everything that you can possibly imagine is yours. Jesus was like, no, I don't want any of this stuff. And he's like, you kind of tempted, you refused whatever the sword was, whatever that power was. And I'm like, fuck, I didn't think about it like that. In my mind, I thought I was refusing a duty or a job that I had to do, or like some kind of violence or something like that. And he's like, well, if you think about it in that context, like the greatest power you can get is refusing the ultimate power or something like that. And I'm like, well, I never asked for it that way, but I never thought about it like that either. Right. It wasn't like, he's like, maybe it was a temptation. And I'm like, oh, I never thought about it in the biblical context that was. So, but ever since he said that a couple of weeks ago, I've been kind of toying with that idea where it's like, well, I don't know what that means, but when I was going through it, it was more like, I don't really want to take this sword and do damage, but I guess it could have been that way as well. So anyways, wanted to bring that up, I guess, since it's top of mind and new.
Well, yeah, it's a proper experience, man. Like, but I suppose you'll only find out later on in life or the next one what that meant.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Amanda, have you had more than one? Jean-Luc, you've had more than one probably, right? Or 1, 2?
Well, legitimately one experience, yeah. Like, and it changed my life completely. Like, nowadays, maybe I could say for the better, but at the time, it certainly didn't feel like it.
Yeah. Right. What about you, Amanda? How about your experience? Was it like good, bad? Was it indifferent? Was it?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I've actually had 13 now.
Magic number.
And they've been physically embodied experiences.
Well, that's intense.
Yeah. And many more that were not physically embodied. But yeah, it has been life-changing. My first one was in 2016, and it was just a month, I think, and a half after I was consecrated as a bishop in the French Gnostic Church. And I was on a pilgrimage to Orsabal, to the Black Madonna in France, to pray for 200 people there.
Wow.
And after I completed my prayers, I went back to my auberge. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up to this extremely bright white light in the bedroom. And I then watched as the light took the shape of a woman. And I literally watched as it coalesced. So the light was coalescing into her figure, into this being. And it was like she was drawing on the moonlight because it was a full moon that night as well. And I was obviously quite terrified.
Yeah.
She was hovering about, I would say, 3 feet above the ground. And she was about 9 feet tall. And she had no facial features, but I could see that she was cloaked or veiled. And then this was an interesting point, which I didn't understand at the time, but I understand a little bit more about it now. She had a scintillating red light where her heart would be. It was kind of glittering and glimmering and swirling. And at the time, I thought that was really strange. And then as I was kind of pinching myself, thinking, am I dreaming here? This is like really surreal.
Right.
I realized it was not dreaming at all. And then she spoke, and that was the scariest thing, because then she said to me that people think they come here to see the Black Madonna, but this is what I really look like. You called me, so what do you want?
You're like, oh,
wow. Hey,
shit.
what language did she speak to you in?
In English, and the voice was very high-pitched and crystalline. It was an extremely strange sound, like nothing I'd heard before.
So not like a human voice at all, really, or?
It was unearthly. It wasn't robotic. It wasn't synthetic. It was unearthly. The only kind of description that I can think of is like, you know, when you rub your finger on the outside of a crystal glass and it makes that sound, that tone. It was like that kind of sound, crystalline, high-pitched frequency. And of course, sorry?
Like a harmonic frequency is voice, yeah? That sounds amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, of course, I could not formulate a thought, let alone think about what I wanted. I was in awe and terror.
Of course, terror.
Yeah, at this unearthly being that had just appeared. And then this is, you see, at the time, John, I never thought this was anything to do with UFOs or those type of things. You know, I've been on a spiritual, esoteric path for a long time, really.
Right.
And I didn't want to imagine it's anything to do with a UFO or abduction type experience. And it's only since becoming aware of Christopher Bledsoe that I realized we'd encountered the same being, essentially.
Right.
And I reached out to Chris when I realized that, and he confirmed it was the same lady. So when I had this experience, the next part I now realize is a lot more in line with a traditional kind of UFO or abduction experience. But when I couldn't answer, she then extended a filament of light from the center of her body and she scanned me. So she was scanning up and down the center of my body with this beam of light that came out of the center of her body. And that went on probably for at least 3 hours. I mean, obviously I lost time. I didn't know what time it was. I wasn't.
Were you paralyzed?
No.
No. Okay.
I wasn't paralyzed, but I was in this kind of deep trance. I knew I could have moved if I wanted to, but I didn't. I didn't dare, actually. And then at the end of it, like dawn was approaching, and that's why I think it must have been about 3 hours. And this happened in April 2016. And then she said to me, what you want is the truth, and the truth you shall have. And then she said, and this is where it gets really weird. You know this part of the story, don't you, Jean-Luc? She said, then if you want to know the truth about your boyfriend, look at his phone. And
okay.
She's there. She's being your bestie there. She's helping you out, right?
Completely surreal, like I said. And automatically that brought me back into my everyday conscious mind. And I sat up bolt upright and said, no. And as I did that, she kind of literally floated backwards out through the window and then kind of merged into the dawn light.
Whoa.
And then the next day, my boyfriend came to collect me because he dropped me off at this pilgrimage. And I told him what had happened. And of course, I asked him, well, why would she say that? You know, I already knew intuitively what it was anyhow. That was that he was still in touch with his ex-partner. And so he confessed that that's what it was all about. And then before we were leaving, I decided to go and buy a Laguerre knife from this little shop opposite the hotel where I was staying. So in Orsabal, what you have is you have the Basilica of the Black Madonna.
Mm-hmm.
And then on one side, you have the hotel where I was staying. And then on the other side, there is a shop. So these three buildings are all in the same alignment. And I think that's relevant to this story. And when we went into the shop, I asked the man who was working there, who's a guy of about 35, have you ever heard of anyone having any strange experiences here? Because I knew nothing about this place, only that the Black Madonna there was one of the most ancient in the whole of France. And she was called the breaker of chains, and people used to go to her from about the 11th century if they ever had real deep problems that they couldn't break. So I thought that was an interesting name, and it was also in a volcanic region, and the basilica was made from volcanic rock. And there was also a stream, like a little spring running through the center of the basilica as well. So all of these things, as we know, they add to the likelihood of these apparitions happening. And so, sorry?
The water link.
The water link, yeah.
Sorry to put it.
No, that's a big thing. The moon and the water are two things that I've always seen come back up as well.
That's right, repeatedly, yeah. And so this man then said, yes, me. And then he went on to describe how almost a year to the day, he had actually decided he was going to take his own life. And he went to the basilica and prayed at the statue of the Black Madonna. And the Black Madonna there, by the way, has been painted white, like in Chartres. Yeah. Kind of sanitized, you know?
Whitewashed, literally.
Yeah, literally.
Terrible.
And so he was praying at the foot of this Madonna, and that night he went back to his apartment, and his apartment was above the shop which was his shop that he owned. And that night he woke up to an extremely bright white light. He decided he was going to do the deed the following day, and he kind of prayed. It was because his wife had left and taken the children, and he wasn't coping very well.
Right.
So he went to the basilica, prayed, and then that night he had his experience. And 3:00 in the morning, again, the same hour as mine, blinding white light woke him up, and then started to take the shape of a cloaked lady and hovering again 3 feet above the ground, and didn't have the scintillating red light like mine had, but she did speak to him in the same kind of a tone of voice, and she told him that she knew what he was planning to do and that he was not to do it. And she explained why his wife had left and that the wife would not come back, but the reason the wife had left is because he was very psychic, and he closed it down because of wanting to be a real man, supposedly, in a French culture. And so in closing his psychic abilities down, he closed down his emotions as well. So he was very stoic and quite cold. And that's why the wife had left. So she told him all of this. And he just said then after that he used to be afraid of a lot of things. And after that experience, he was never afraid of anything again. And that he stopped completely wanting to harm himself. And that he said, I'm not afraid of anything now because I know the lady is with me.
There you go.
So for me, what was extraordinary about this was not only the experience itself, but meeting someone less than 24 hours later who had an almost identical experience in the same place.
Right. Almost on the same day.
Yeah.
Wow.
It seems like she appears to quite a lot of people, but what's strange about you is that she's appeared to you more than once. Or, like most people have seen her twice, or multiple times. I wonder if that's something to do with like the role that you play, like the responsibility you have with the French Gnostic Church, or the orders that came before that. Is it something you think that came as part of an initiation, or?
Or being a
Yeah.
female yourself. I mean, that could be, I mean,
Yeah, really, yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
I don't know many, maybe one, maybe other than you that have had, that it's been a woman that's had experience. I don't know.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting because I don't know any other woman.
Right. I don't know if our friend Jean-Luc, did she, I don't want to say her name in case she doesn't want anybody to know about it, but I think you know who she is. She's our friend. You're a nice friend.
She's our friend. Hang on.
Yeah.
Who we're talking about here, man?
We talk all the time. Her and I and you. Our friend.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, okay, yeah.
Has she had I don't know if she has or not. No. Okay. All right. So yeah, you're the only one I know. Then you're the only one I know.
Yeah, it's a very strange situation.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's anything to do with who you are?
I do.
Not your position. From birth. Is it a birth thing, like a blood thing?
Yeah, I do. I do think that.
I think it's like for everybody then that probably has that experience.
Yeah, I think so.
Bloodline.
Yeah.
This is what I've come to as well.
Or no, rhesus negative, or maybe something else. I don't know.
That's always a big chat, isn't it? The Rh negative element, but I don't know if that's been taken out of context nowadays. But sorry, Amanda, go on.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say I do actually have a theory about this. So my theory is that some of us, I think our ancestors have been contactees, and so this came to me because I'm a complete beginner in this field of UFO, UAP, NHI research, etc. I've literally read like 3 books and that's it.
Yeah, that's good. And don't get too wrapped up in the bullshit.
Yeah.
You've come from the right place. Like going towards UFOs is probably the wrong place.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. Yeah. But because of my connection with Chris Bledsoe, I then made a connection with Diana Pasulka.
Okay.
Yeah, and Diana was hosting a conference a couple of years ago talking about the UFO and popular culture and art and film and things like that with Morbid Anatomy online. And I'd been introduced to her work by people close to Chris, and they suggested that I should get in contact with her. But I just didn't want to go down that route, really.
Right.
It's hard enough to even accept that my encounter was anything to do with what Chris Bledsoe experienced. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of people that don't see the connection or don't feel there is one even. I mean, but they're,
Really?
Bledsoes have come out. They've actually said, haven't they, that they've got some sort of blood connection to the Bledsoe castle line, or I think there's some relation to royalty through that. And I know if you follow that for far enough back, you start to head towards some very strange bloodlines.
Yeah, that's right. I actually wrote to Chris and told him about that because Bledsoe bloodline is connected to Margaret Beaufort, who was the founding mother of the Tudor dynasty. And she could not actually get pregnant. And so she made a pilgrimage to a holy well in North Wales, which is called Holywell, the Shrine of St. Winifred. And it was a very famous holy well that was pre-Christian and then Christianized. And because of going to this holy well and going in the water, she was then able to conceive her royal heir. And she then commissioned a beautiful star-shaped Gothic well shrine to be created around the spring, which is still there today. And so she was there already praying to this Welsh saint, St. Winifred, to be able to give birth. And so in a way, she had already made that step, I think, towards the lady. And then, of course, the lady granted her a miracle and she conceived. And then that is part of Chris's bloodline because he is related directly to her. So I found that out and told him about that, and he thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting because you think about, look, a lot of these when you follow back sort of the supposedly sacred bloodlines, and usually that means psychic bloodlines, you start heading towards stuff like the Quinator of the Merovingian legends, Melusine, which obviously ties into the D'Anjou family line. So like these water women, or these water monsters sometimes, I guess, I don't know what you'd call them, but they seem to have this link to strange bloodlines and, you know, the next stage of, you know, human ability. So I don't know what that means, but I know has Amanda gone? Have we lost her?
I think her connection kind of dropped, but that's cool. I'm sure she'll pop back in. The water thing is a huge connection to that. And it's I wonder if the, you know, how that all fits, as far as there's so many people in America, let alone Europe or the rest of the world, that have no idea of their bloodline or their ancestry.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, at all. Very little.
Well,
and
it's hard to follow it back after a certain sort of level. Yeah, most people can usually get back to like the 1600s, but
after that, it's just kind of blurry. Yeah,
unless you're from some kind of noble or aristocratic family line or an offshoot of one, so you can then dig into theirs and then follow it back. But
I think with all the DNA genetic research now has gotten to the point where that's kind of better, right?
Make it a little easier, I guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I've never given my DNA to any of that because I've never liked the idea of doing it. Although my mum did a DNA test and stuff, and I kind of jumped off the back of hers, which is interesting.
That's all right.
But it wasn't.
It's everything. Your DNA from the air, man. I'm not even shitting you. It's a legit thing. I've read the research, and they do it. They can pull people's DNA from the air within 100 feet or something like that.
That's crazy. That's enough to make me powerful.
It's real. It's a real thing. You think it's crazy, but I'll show you the link. It's real. They can do that. So it's not like you got to worry about giving it to somebody. They got it. You know. The DNA thing. It's just whatever. But yeah.
I mean, I was reading earlier on about how, because what's interesting, because I know, Amanda, you're part of, or I don't know if you're still there. Yeah. You're part of the Dragon Court. Am I right? Dragon Order.
Yeah, kind of. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you all right talking about that? I don't want to.
Kind of.
We can cut it out too. No big deal.
Okay, cool. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Like, we'll send you a copy of this before.
Yeah, whatever you want me to cut it out, I'll cut it out.
Remove that. Yeah. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing. Just remove everything I've said, baby.
For the next 2 hours, remove everything I said.
But I know that they were running back in the early 2000s. The Dragon Court under Nicholas de Beer were running DNA tests, looking for a certain type of bloodline, which would have a higher propensity for psychic ability, which is kind of exactly the same stuff that people like Gary Nolan and stuff are doing now. You know, this idea that you can find a certain type of DNA that shows a propensity for psychic ability.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting how it all crosses over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that something you've been aware of?
Yes. Yeah, because all the orders that I was initiated into in France were operating on that basis, essentially. So I never went looking for any of these things. It kind of found me.
Yeah. So it always happens to me too.
Right.
All the orders that I'm in, they found me too. But
that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's kind of nice because then, it's the real deal. It's not, something that.
It doesn't feel bad. I always, I tell people, it's like, I feel like I'm back home. Like I'm back with my family or something when I'm hanging out with the guys, that way. That's the way I feel. Like, oh, I've always been here. I'm just coming back and hanging out with my friends, my brothers or whatever. Yeah. But it doesn't feel out of place, and it feels more home than home sometimes, which sounds weird, but yeah.
It doesn't sounds absolutely accurate. Yeah.
But it's such an unspoken thing when we're together too. I think I'm probably the one that's like, hey, I'm talking about, and they're like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. We know. Okay. But yeah, I don't think everybody has like a high cognitive level of that's what it's all about. I mean,
Mm.
Do you
yeah.
think that there'll be people that join these, whether they're approached or not, they're doing it because they're on some sort of path, like a destiny.
Mhm.
That it's something sort of almost pre-written. They have to be there. I think it must
Definitely,
be that
I would say
destiny.
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
because my path started in 2009 when I had a dream that then led me to Nicholas Clavire's work.
Mm.
And in 2009, I did not want to be doing this. I'd been psychic all my life, as you know, but I hadn't wanted to be. I was trying to have a normal life. And the thing is, when you're chosen for this, you can't have a normal life. And the more you try, the worse life gets, actually. That's been my experience. And so that happened in 2009. And in 2013 was when I had another dream that led me to a woman called Iona Miller. And I wrote, when I had the dream that led me to her, I wrote and told her that's how I'd found her. And she said, "Oh, have you ever found anyone else through a dream?" So I said, "Well, actually, yeah, this guy, Nicholas Sophia, but I never made contact with him." And she said, "Well, not only do I know Nick, but I built that website that you found of his." So
Nice.
this was several years apart, two people connected to the Dragon Order and the Dragon Court. And Nick had just died. Like, the weird thing was, when I had that dream and I found out about him, I felt like he had already died, but he hadn't. But he was very close to dying at that time. And that's why I didn't reach out to him then. But then when I made contact with Iona, that's when the whole thing opened up. And she was a member of many different orders, but also she was potentiated by CIA. So she was taken out of school when she was about 15 because she was gifted. And so she was potentiated. And then she was employed by them in many different areas. And her partner was a physicist called Richard Allen Miller. And yeah, Iona sadly passed away a couple of years ago during COVID. But when I made that connection with her, the first thing she said, well, the second thing she said was, "Well, if you found me and Nicholas through dreams, then you must be a member of the bloodline then." So I denied knowing anything about what she was speaking of, and she then psychically read my entire genealogy and told me things about it that I couldn't deny. And so that's really how the whole thing got started. And then through her, I made a contact in Texas. And strangely, he was in contact with a woman in Paris, and that woman in Paris read me clairvoyantly and said, "I want her in our order." And she would do things like send me different psychic signals, like phrases, words, images, things like that, and then contact me later the same day and say, "What does this mean to you?" Or, "Have you ever thought about this?" And she would see if the signals had landed.
It seems to pan out.
It does.
But I know different types of abilities. What would you class yours as, Amanda? What would you say that your psychic abilities range to?
Clairvoyance, clairaudience, precognition and retrocognition mainly, and healing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And which are they equally as strong, each of those areas, or is the one that's the strongest?
I think because I've been doing it for so long now, they all work kind of together. But yeah, clairaudience, I think, is one of my strongest. Oh, clairsentience as well. Retrocognition is kind of weird, where you know things about the past of different places and people and things like that. That was the first gift that I had when I was about 6. And knowing the history of a place and the things that have happened there, that kind of thing is a strange.
It's hard when you're a kid too, though. You can't elaborate on that shit when that happens.
That's right.
understanding of it, instead of just blocking it away. We like what happened to when we were kids. We talk about your parents are just like, you're crazy kid. You're seeing ghosts. Get out of here. You're watching too much TV. And it's like, fucking, yeah, I'm seeing ghosts. But, that's it. I think society and the way we diminish it squashes it a lot for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
That's our problem in the West, that it's become, most people don't believe in it. And if you do, you're an alternative sort. But then that means that even if you are experiencing it, somebody else has put you into a box, and we're all from different lives and worlds, and like we've all got the same experiences, and it shows that there isn't a box you can put people like us into, because we're all individuals, Yeah. And I think it's sad that we're led to think that it's either madness or an eccentricity when it's real, It's hard. That's the hardest thing for me, I think.
That's for everybody too. And then the thing we always talk about, and we've talked about it a bunch of different times, is that like the people that have UFO experiences don't talk to people that have psychic experiences. Well, it's becoming, like we were talking before you got on the call, Amanda, that now it's becoming, Jean-Luc and I have been talking about the occult and the connection to this shit since the beginning for 5 years more. And now it's, since these influencers are talking about it, now it's a big deal and people are talking about it. But before that, they weren't, but the Bigfoot people don't talk to the ghost people, and the ghost people don't talk to the psychic people, and the psychic people don't talk to the UFO people. And it's like, it's all the same. It's all the same thing. It's all connected.
I remember, obviously there's always been the Jack Parsons thing connected to ufology. And, there's lots of researchers that have gone down that route. But in terms of the mainstream, majority of people don't come at it from that point of view until very recently. And that seems to have, in fact, like a few years back when we talk about it, you'd have people literally saying, you guys are so fucked, you're so wrong. To be going down this route, it's not about Freemasonry, it's not about the occult, it's not connected to Templar myths, and it's not connected to, and we'd be going, well, fair enough, if this is what we think, yeah? But you'd kind of get ridiculed for it. Whereas now, everyone online that's in that world is now become an expert on John Dee, and they've all become an expert on channeling and Enochian angels, and because that's how it goes. It's an influencer heavy topic, and people are sheep for it, So it's crazy. So in terms of a recruitment ground for belief systems, like ufology is huge because people listen to certain figureheads. And those figureheads wield quite a lot of power, So the infiltration of the occult is pretty much complete, I think, for a lot of ufologists.
Yeah.
So I feel like we were ahead of the curve on that one, John.
Yeah, in some regards. But at the same time, it's scary, because people are doing things. They're basically doing occult rituals that they don't understand and they don't really know. They're just picking shit out of books or finding stuff online and going out in fields and doing things that they really shouldn't be messing with. And then what does that do? That just permeates the negative connotation for some of this shit, because like, oh yeah, we did this and it's demonic. Well, maybe you shouldn't have fucking done this ritual that you read in online with your buddies out in the woods, like, and you weren't serious about it. Well, right? I don't know.
You start seeing lots and lots of these people who become like edgelord quantum wizards, and they get into like the proper channeling and C5, and it goes from being cool modern buzzwords in ufology to being occult ritual stuff, to then them freaking out and their lives turning into a mess. And we've noticed that quite a lot of these people seem to become Christians,
Yeah,
because they're terrified. Like whatever happens to them, they can't comprehend it, so they end up looking for the thing that they think is going to save them. And in our society, that's probably going to be Jesus Christ, right?
And sometimes it does for some of these people.
Well, yeah. It does. But it's I'm
gonna jump upstairs for a minute. You guys keep talking. I'll be back in like a couple minutes. I just gotta
okay. Yeah.
Feed the kid. No, I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. But yeah, so like I said, we do a lot of editing, so anything that we talk about, we'll just take it out, but yeah, so like when he comes back as well, I wanted to talk about kind of like your links to what made you first interested in the Black Madonna, because obviously that's something that I'm fascinated by too, and where that began.
So that began with an encounter that I had in 2013. So in 2009, I had that dream that led me to Nicholas de Vere's work. And then in 2013, I'd only just started working professionally as a clairvoyant again after a long hiatus. And a friend down in London recommended that a client of his who lived in Paris get in contact with me for a reading. And the minute I did look at this man on Skype, I could just see this past life, what appeared to be a past life. It's like watching a film. And I had no understanding of past lives up until that point. And I didn't know what I was seeing. But again, you know, having this kind of beginner's mind, I think that's a crucial thing with psychic work, actually, to always be open to whatever happens and not judge it. So if I'd had a belief system about past lives or something, then I may have judged what I was seeing or influenced it in some way. But because I didn't have a belief system about it, I could just tell him what I was seeing as it was happening. And he then told me at the end of the story that I'd shared that he'd been to see quite a few different psychics and healers about this particular problem that he was having. And they'd all seen part of the story and part of the solution, but I'd seen the whole story and the whole solution. And what it was is that I'd seen him as a heretic priest in an underground Gnostic sect somewhere in either France or Italy. And when I say underground, like they literally met in caves. Now, at the time when this happened, I had no knowledge of any of these things. I was not studying any of this. And so I just told him what I saw. And the kind of the vision that I had there were these two men, and he was one of the two men, and they were like the figureheads of this cult. But under the ground in the caves were 13 women, and they were kind of like Vessel virgins, but they were really the kind of the hub of the whole spiritual organization. And so he was one of these two men, and he then made a big mistake and had an affair with a woman who was the wife of the proconsul of this place. And she became suspicious about what he was doing and followed him down to the caves one night and saw what he was doing and reported it. And the caves were then raided, and we were, well, I say we because I was there, we were all thrown out. And he was then hung in the square, but before they hung him, they castrated him. And that's what I saw in this vision. And the problem that he had, and the reason why he was looking for help, was that he kept trying to hang himself and castrate himself. And his mom had caught him, and his girlfriend had caught him, and a few people had caught him trying to do this. Now, this guy was extremely wealthy, extremely well connected, educated. He had everything going for him, and yet he had this compulsion, and he didn't know where it came from. So when I told him this story, he was just crying the whole time. And at the end of it, he said, "Thank you. This is what has been plaguing me for so many years." And then he told me that about 2 weeks before he contacted me, that he'd been in his apartment in Paris, and he had an experience with this black goddess. That's the only way he could describe it. This entity, this black entity, appeared in his apartment. And he was then put into a protracted Kundalini state that lasted for about a week. He couldn't move. And not only could he not move, but he grew breasts and started to lactate. And it was an extremely intense experience for him. And he was really, really scared. And he was wondering, is this a demon? You know, what was that? And so I read into him and read into this being. And this is where my interest in the Black Madonna comes from, because I read into this being and into him, and I reassured him that it was nothing evil. at all, but he'd had some kind of extended mystical experience, and I drew his attention to many of the stories of the Christian saints, and the mystical and Hindu saints also had similar experiences with divine beings in which they couldn't move, kundalini, lactating, things like that. You know, I knew from my studies when I was studying theology that these kind of things happen to people. And so that was able to put his mind at ease, and that helped him to feel more relaxed about his experience. And so after what happened then, after this connection with him, is I said to him, look, I have to continue to work with you, but I can't charge you any more money, because I was there in this memory. I was part of this group, and we've clearly got some work to do together. And I can't charge you any money for this, because this is some kind of thing we have to work out. So he and I started to do work together every single day for about a year on this whole story. And he was the gateway to me moving to France, essentially, because of this work we were doing together. And about a week after I had this conversation with him, I was sitting in my room, and then I had what I guess could be called an abduction experience, but I would never have called it that at the time. This black goddess appeared to me as well, except she didn't appear in human form like she appeared to him. She appeared as a kind of cosmic power that was overwhelmingly feminine and dark, and then took me up, is the way I described it, took me up and showed me the workings of the cosmos from her perspective, from that perspective. And so I was looking at black holes, gravity, subatomic particles, all kinds of things to do with quantum physics, and also death, like how death happens, and how there is a wormhole sort of portal, like a black hole, through which we pass upon death, and that when we pass through that, we go into her realm. But her realm is actually the realm from which we all come, and actually it encompasses this realm in truth. That we are in her cosmic womb, essentially. And then I was shown reincarnation cycles, and when I say, you know, her realm was black, it was also pinpointed with light, and I was shown that the light is the masculine principle, actually, and that has a correlation in the sperm and in the conception process, and how information and light is passed down through the sperm, and how this as above, so below operates in that divine realm and here in our personal realm as well as human beings, and the whole reincarnation cycle. So this whole thing happened. And one of the things that stayed with me is that she showed me that when we reincarnate, there's no such thing as karma. We are not punished. We're not sent here, you know, to have any kind of punishment. It's through desire, it's through choice. And yeah, and it changed my life, this experience. This was 3 years before the White Lady experience. And in Occitania, they say first you meet the Black Madonna, then you meet the White Lady. And that was my experience. And so having had that encounter, I was then very confused, of course, because I had no previous understanding of any of this. And so I was looking for answers, you know, who was this being? And first of all, I was looking towards Kali because of the Indian mathematician who'd also had a similar experience. What's his name? Is it Ramajan?
Yeah. I know who you're talking about. Is it Ramakrishna?
His name. But anyway, because of him, I started looking at Kali, and then naturally, when I moved to the south of France, I was given the 2 pieces of meteorite and told about their connection with the Black Madonna. But when I was in France, that's when I realized that I think the Black Madonna is more akin to my experience than Kali, because Kali is too almost anthropomorphic, whereas the Black Madonna has that same kind of inhuman nature, to me at least. Yeah. So that's how it started for me.
And it seems that the Black Madonna, like, the more I dig over these last few years, like, is connected to just about every facet of the mysteries that I'm interested in. It's like seems to be the origins of most of it. Most of the mystery schools, like most of the Abrahamic faiths, have still got these links back to these black rocks, and they're still there right now. I mean, like the Muslims on the Hajj in Mecca, circling the black rock in the Kaaba, and the meteorite that was held at Palatine Hill in Rome, and then obviously you've got, it's not so black anymore, but I think the Stone of Scone, like the coronation stone, apparently is linked to this too. So it all gets pretty crazy. It seems to permeate our traditions and our culture. I was reading the other day as well that when the United Nations building was finished in Europe, Nicholas Roerich had apparently taken part of one of his black stones to the UN for its inaugural meeting. Yeah? It's interesting, isn't it? And all these organisations seem to, certain types of people seem to be in the know about this. And I guess that's a nod back to the ancient goddess, the pagan goddess worship, I think, and the Grail.
The two black stones I was given when I moved down to Montsegur, I was told were the lapis lazuli, connected to Parsifal's story, and that's part of the legend there, at least. Stones that fell out of Lucifer's crown.
That's right, yeah. Fascinating, isn't it? And then, do you think that these are the same stones that people talk about that were originally found in Turkey, that were venerated then by the people as the ancient goddess? So it became being a cult of Cybele, or Sybil.
I do.
Is that right? Yeah. Fascinating. I've really got to do some more traveling. I can't wait to go out around the world and check out some of these spots. That's my next mission, I think. To go out
I think one of the keys about the Black Madonna and these meteoric stones is that they do have objective healing powers.
Very interesting.
So have you noticed that with people? Like, have you seen them physically healed or psychologically healed, or both? Or
both?
Yeah. Okay.
And the stones that I have bleed, like when you rub them together, and that's all part of the legend as well. I mean, how they found this out, I don't know, but they do, they bleed. And Richard, his mum had cancer in her eyes, and he put the blood from the bleeding stones in her eyes, and she was cured for 10 years.
Wow.
That's awesome.
You know when you say that you rub, because I mean, I've held these stones when I was with you, and like when you rub them together, do you actually get moisture from them then? Is that what happens?
No, you have to put water on them and then rub them. So they're still being, sorry?
So that you moisten them with water first, then you rub them, and that's the blood, so to speak. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we've tried to have them analysed so many times by so many different people. I took them to a geologist here in Glastonbury, and she was completely in awe of them. And she just said, these come from the heart of space. I've never seen anything like this. And, she was very awed by them. Other people, everyone has a different experience with them. Yeah. It's interesting to see.
That's for sure. I know when I felt them, like, I felt there's definitely there's an energy source, so it feels like there's life in them or something. It's weird. Yeah? It's hard to describe.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. And the only time I've ever felt that before is another type of meteor. There's a crystal. It's quite an expensive one. I can't remember what it's called. It's kind of greenish in colour, and it is meteoric. I can't remember what it's called. Moldavite.
Yeah.
Moldavite. So yeah, that had a similar feel to it, and that's the only time I've ever felt it. So something to do with this meteoric sort of substance. It's crazy. I really, you can see how people kind of become obsessed by this stuff, especially when you experience it. It's like, you need to know more. And it's like, well, what is it? And, it's like, a lot of the stuff I've read, like, points to the idea that this is for the Templars, for example, was kind of like their version of the Grail, like it was like maybe that was their aim. It was the protection of this meteorite. It fascinates me, honestly. I love all that stuff. I really want to know more. You mentioned that you got to know Diana Pasulka, who, interestingly, when we talked, the connection that I picked up was that you both have worked as advisors in cinema, in movie making, which is pretty cool. And I was going to ask you about that. Like, you worked on a movie called The Color Out of Space, which was an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that come about?
So, well, I moved to France in 2013, and then in 2016 I had my experience with the lady. And through that I made contact with a guy called Richard Stanley, who was working in film, and he also had an encounter with the White Lady himself in Montségur 20 years ago now. And that encounter led him to quit his career and move to Montségur and work as a kind of guide in Montségur. But he was called to Montségur because he was making a documentary for the BBC about Otto Rahn and the Holy Grail. And I don't think he expected to see this being on the mountain, and it changed his life as well. So Richard was living in Montségur, and I at the time was working for an esoteric web TV channel in Paris, and part of my job was to find speakers to speak on the channel. And Richard was in a list of speakers that I was given, and I emailed all of them. And when we communicated, he added me to his private Facebook group, and on the group he had made a post about his own experience with the White Lady and correlating it to the apparitions of Mary. And at that time, I didn't know anyone that, apart from that one man that I'd met in Orsabal the day after my experience, who'd had an encounter like this. And I was feeling very stigmatized, actually, by the whole thing. I'd had many mystical experiences since I was a child and different encounters, but nothing like this. Completely physical and embodied. And so when I heard Richard's story, and his was a physical experience as well, in that he could literally hear her feet crunching across the stones in the castle of Montségur. And then she stared right at him and then disappeared through a wall. And he also had a sword story, actually, and he kept saying he every full moon he goes up the mountain and pledges his sword to her. Yeah.
Wow.
That's right.
So, like the Montségur link to the White Lady is connected to Esclamande
de Foix, yeah, and also Balisama, whose name means summer bright or bright summer.
So this is the Cathar, like the Albigensians, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. And even the word Albigensian refers to light, the people of the light. And Nicholas de Vere speaks about that. And so Richard's experience was very intense and changed his life. And then when I read about his experience, I had to make contact with him directly and talk about it. And so I think the lady brought us both together, and before too long I went to Montségur to meet him, and we started a relationship, and I moved to be with him. And then we were doing work in the French Gnostic Church together, doing research about the Cathars and taking people up the mountain. But I was told by a clairvoyant I work with while I was with Richard that we were going to make a movie with Nicolas Cage, and I thought, this just sounds completely crazy. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, right.
And then one night we got a telephone call in the middle of the night, and it was Nicolas Cage. And Richard thought it was someone pranking him, but no, it was definitely Nicolas Cage. And he'd written a script for Color Out of Space 8 years before, and it just so happened to be handed to Nick at Cannes that year. And the lookbook for the script had a pink locust on the front. And Nick, being Nick, just saw this pink locust, didn't even read the script, and said, I want to make this film if it's got a pink locust in it. So that's the story. And it was given to him by Spectrovision. He'd just made Mandy with Spectrovision. And so that they gave him the script at Cannes, and he wanted to do it. So then he called us and said that. Again, we still didn't really believe it. And then it was about a few months after that one of the producers from Spectrovision turned up at Monsegur. It was Halloween Eve, and we decided to give him an authentic experience of the village in the mountains by taking him to the town hall for the Halloween party.
Nice.
Wow. That was amazing.
And Richard and I reworked the script. So he came out, had the meeting with us, and said, look, the script is great, but Richard had written it with his previous partner, Scarlett, and they said the female characters are unlikable, and we need it rewritten with another female perspective. So they asked me to do it. And at the time, I was not interested because it's an adaptation of a H.P. Lovecraft story and quite dark and nihilistic in the original script. But I finally was persuaded to help rewrite it. And and then what I wanted to do was put real ritual magic into it, and the people who watch the film who know about ritual magic can see that. And that's something that is very important to Richard and I, to make it into a genuine initiatory experience for the viewers. And that's what Diana saw when she watched it. So I went out to Portugal. We filmed in Sintra, and again had many, many encounters with the phenomena when we were making the film, when we were writing the script, when we were making the film on the set. There were many different things that happened. And Diana watched the film and said to her partner, whoever was involved in this certainly knew what they were doing when it comes to doing ritual magic. So when I saw on Facebook that she was doing a course about Color Out of Space, was part of the course she was doing, that was my opening to make contact. And she then asked me to speak at the conference about the film.
That's awesome.
So and what's interesting though is that all these links are so strange. So it's an H.P. Lovecraft movie about a meteorite.
That's right.
That comes down and changes people irreversibly. I'm not going to spoil it for people, but that ending, oh my god. Oh man, I have nightmares about it still. Like, it's a really good movie, great horror movie.
Which part of the ending are you speaking about? The vineyard or wards, or
the mum and the boy? Like, it breaks my heart. Like, but I get it as well. I get there's more to it. There's more symbolism there. But it's quite a movie. If anybody hasn't seen it, go and watch it. It's incredible. But I am fascinated by the fact that whether Nicolas Cage, because I believe that a lot of these things don't happen just by chance, but by some sort of fate. But Nicolas Cage obviously joins a movie, becomes part of a film about a meteorite that hits, written by H.P. Lovecraft. And it turns out that Nicolas Cage, in his spare time, one of his hobbies is collecting rare meteorites. Right? Yeah. I remember saying this to you, that blew me away, because he did another film before that called Knowing, and in Knowing it involves black stones, which are like portents of future prophecy, and aliens. So there's almost this weird link running through it. The black stone obviously potentially being representative of the Grail, then takes you back to his family, the Coppolas. And again, this is one of my little weird obsessions I've got into. And when you start looking at the Coppolas and their relation to the Black Madonna, the birth of the New Age, whether people see it or not, and the propagation of the Holy Grail myth, that's what Francis Ford Coppola's been up to for years, you know, when you start to sort of read between the lines. So it's funny seeing this family line coming down and then meeting you and Richard, who are actually, you know, working with ritual magic, and you're knowledgeable about the black stones, the black goddess. You've actually got your own bleeding black stones, and then all of a sudden you've got people like Nicolas Cage in your film, who's already got a past connected to black stones, meteorite collections. It almost seems like it's fated, you know.
Definitely. And then and we had the colour communicating with us as well, like communicating with myself and with Richard and with this clairvoyant that I work with called Susan. And one of the most not noticeable of these events was when Richard, well, it wasn't really his idea. They wanted to paint the house that we'd found in Portugal pink. It was pink, and they wanted to paint it cream so it would look more Lovecraftian, like more like a house from New England. And Susan was sitting minding her own business and suddenly saw the colour manifest in front of her, and she said it was creeping along the ground and it had fingers. And it immediately gave the message, tell Amanda to tell Richard, do not change the colour of the house. The colour chose that house because it's pink. Do not change the colour of the house. And I didn't know at this time, when she got this message, that Richard was literally with the art director looking at swatches of paint and deciding what colour they were going to choose for the outside of the house. And so I called him, told him this, and he told me, well, I was just with Sergio and we were about to change, you know, the colour. Okay, I'll tell them now and we'll stop. And so he stopped and the house remained pink. And as you know, if you've seen the film, it's quite important, isn't it, how it looks, the aesthetic. And what was really odd about this was that Richard and I are sometimes way too open. And we told the producers what had happened. And I was in France at the time, he was on set, and the producers didn't believe us. And they said, Amanda must be leaking information out to people. Richard's not keeping his NDA. This is like intellectual property theft. Like, they started to get really paranoid. They couldn't believe that there were real supernatural events happening, you know, on the set, even though it's a supernatural film. However, by the end of the shoot, they completely changed their mind because so many things happened, not just to me and Richard, but to other people on the set, that they could not remain skeptical any longer.
I think Diana Episocopa had that same kind of experience on the set of the film she was.
The Conjuring.
Wasn't there something like that as well? There was some.
Did she have some sort of supernatural experience?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah. She doesn't talk about it, I don't think, publicly, but yeah.
Yeah. Oops.
Okay.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, you could say she did. We don't need to go into details. But I mean,
tell me all about it after the show.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about Colour Out of Space as well is that we put a whole section into the movie about the Panspermia theory, about life being seeded on meteorites. And it was cut. It was taken out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I've read like 15 different peer-reviewed studies around after COVID. It was pre-COVID and during COVID that they were theoretically saying that COVID could have came from meteorite, and that they've known that there have been different, types of bacteria or whatever that have survived space and could have potentially been found in meteorites. And I'm like, oh, really? So it's a real thing.
That's right. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was about to say it and I wasn't sure, because it's such a controversial subject.
It's controversial, but it's like almost proven that it's possible.
Proven.
Yeah,
it is proven. And there is an astrobiologist called Chandra, I can't remember his surname, but he, with Frank Hoyle, Fred Hoyle has written a number of books about this theory about viruses from space, and pointed out that whenever we have the thinning of the Earth's magnetic atmosphere, which we're having right now and have had since then, viruses and bacteria can survive when they pass through our atmosphere. I mean, if you've read the studies, you must know this.
Yep.
Yeah. And he pointed out that these have happened periodically throughout history, these types of plagues that come on meteorites or comets. That's right. And it's why comets were always, considered to be dangerous.
Bad omens, right?
Yeah.
But even you say that now, but then you have like the bacteria that survived the outside of the space station. They've done that. And they tested all these things and they brought it back. And Russia just had one recently that they've tested some type of bacteria that was, they've bred in space to be, outside of the station and all this other things. And people are just like, yeah, okay. But then when you talk to theories like, oh yeah, well, COVID came from space, everybody's like, what are you smoking? That's not true. But then, if you look at it, there's definite precedence for it to be happen. So.
Well, this is it. And to be honest, when we wrote Color Up Space, one of the things that we put in was this idea that it brings out what's within everybody. That line in the Gospel of Thomas, if you bring out that which is within you, that which is within you will save you. But if you do not bring out that which is within you, that which is within you will kill you. And we put into the script this idea that the color, this meteoric being or entity or whatever it was, consciousness, changed everything around it, but it made it more of itself. And if you watch the film with that in mind, you'll see why. And I do believe that's what happened with COVID, when we see how people have behaved and the change in our global consciousness as a result. And you probably know, if you've read those peer-reviewed studies as well, that some people have said that these plagues have actually also elevated human consciousness in those who survived.
Right. It's an awakening. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of plays almost into the 2001: A Space Odyssey stuff. Like I know it's not a plague or anything, but the idea that this black rock appears periodically through time and then changes the nature of evolution, human consciousness. It's like some sort of prompter of the next step of humanity, or some sort of expansion of human consciousness. And obviously, Arthur C. Clarke, when he wrote that originally, I think he wrote it as a pyramid floating in space, and it was Kubrick that switched it to a black monolith after reading, I think, some from Carl Jung, who talked about a black rock in space. And interesting links to some of these people who are obviously connected, again, through Hollywood with Kubrick, but then obviously Carl Jung and psychoanalysis and dream analysis and that kind of thing. But all of these people who were sort of connected to these like mystery schools and possibly secret societies got this obsession with the black stone, and that thing brings on the next stage or introduces something into us that changes us. And one thing that interested me, I talked to you, Amanda, about it a while, but I don't know if you remember, but I've been reading about, because in Lovecraft, they talk about a black goo called, I think they call it the Shoggoth, or I can't remember what it's called, but it basically takes control of people. And in ufology, there's, you go into stuff like the X-Files and Ridley Scott, Prometheus and all that. This black goo is quite prevalent. It comes up. But when you sort of trace it back, it ends up being connected to a disease, or some people are connected to a disease called Morgellons disease, which is where people get like a skin blemish, which then seems to sprout this sort of black fibrous matter. And it's considered to be like a pseudo illness because no doctor has ever said it's a real thing. But it's called Morgellons, and Morgellons was named weirdly after a guy from the Languedoc area, which is where the Cathar stuff is, near Montsegur. And the first Morgellons was an alchemist that lived in that region in the 17th century and started to see that in people in that area, which is where a lot of these black stones are, right? So, I mean, I might be putting two and two together and making five, but there's some really strange correlations there.
Yeah.
Again, H.P. Lovecraft, to that region of France, to black meteoric stones. Right? I don't know.
It's a definite thread, man. I mean, I can't say that you can't. I mean, most of it is tied into, at least in Masonry, there's a reference to comets and meteorites, and there's a couple different things there. And then, they may be just, they're, hearkened to older, more deep mystery schools, right? That are, Freemasonry is kind of, in my mind, the repository of like much ancient, older mystery schools, and it kind of has a conglomerate of a bunch of different things that are thrown in there, and and more in the symbology aspect of it, so that people with the eyes to see actually are awakened by it, and other people are like, "Oh, that's cool," and then, like now the people that kind of like are hip to it or whatever, it's kind of awakened. But I think it's just all these different magical elements from, disparate sources are kind of crammed in there into a allegory of morality and things like that, and symbology. But I think that that's kind of part of the thing in there, where it's kind of a grab bag, but all of it coalesces into one thing. But so meteorites, revolution of planets, comets, things like that.
Are you allowed to say why meteorites come out into your tradition?
Let's see. It's a comet is one of it, so it's basically a reference to a comet, and I'm trying to remember the actual passage right now, but it'll come to me in a minute. But it's one of the degrees where that basically even comets paths are known and followed, and I can't remember the rest of it, but it's something like that, where you are basically, your path is known, and just like
It's
we
mapped out.
yeah, it's kind of like just how we map the stars, and even when you think, I think the gist of it is, and people are going to lambaste me over this, but basically the gist of it is that even if you see a comet and it's this fleeting thing that's just shooting past you, and you think like, oh wow, that can never be tracked, it's just a momentary thing, but even that can be followed and tracked and studied, and that is part of the whole universe. So are you, right? You're not just this one flash in the pan. You're kind of like part of the whole thing, right?
The monad, like, we're just elements of the one being, the one creator.
Mm-hmm. Monad is a big part of Masonry as well too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get with that, like, the universal ocean, we're all drops within it. I can feel that. Like, I believe that myself. But this comet stuff, like, I mean, do you remember the Heaven's Gate cult?
Oh yeah.
Back
Yeah.
in the
Hellbop
90s?
Comet, when they all kill themselves because they thought they were going to go on the back of it and go to heaven. I know there's a lot
That's
of those
right.
too. But and then
But
the same thing with the
like,
Aztecs and things like that would murder people during the comets and things like that, and to sacrifice people too. It goes back forever.
They
Right?
would. So there's this idea of sacrifice, and that the Heaven's Gate cult, when you actually follow back what, because then the guy who was the cult leader was Marshall Applewhite, heavily interested in Cathars. Some of their senior members of the cult over time castrated themselves.
Yeah.
So we're going back to that again, like this idea of the castration, the willful eunuchs.
Mm-hmm.
I know that in a conversation me and Amanda have had, is that part of, we talked again about how Black Rock had been in Palatine Hill in Rome under this boy emperor, Elagabalus, who again was surrounded by eunuch priests and was potentially a transsexual himself, yeah. And the reason being, and I didn't know this, Amanda told me this, the reason a lot of the time these people were eunuchs was because only women were allowed or able to touch the Black Rock, or people of a feminine persuasion. So to become castrati meant that they were then allowed to touch the rock. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, this is in my research, but the Black Stone of Pessinus, which was called to Rome by the oracles when it was being besieged by Hannibal, that's what I read. Yeah, that it was only permitted to be handled by women initially. It was a female-only cult, and I don't know how they gained permission to have the stone taken to Rome, but they did, and it was passed woman to woman to woman until it got to the boat, and then it was passed to a man dressed wearing women's clothes, like a priest in women's clothes on the boat, and then taken to Rome. And so the legend goes, this is why Catholic priests wear basically women's clothes, like all the different petticoats and things that they wear underneath their robes, their vestments. Yeah, and so obviously then the fact that it was taken out of women's hands, it could only be then handled by men who were as women.
Okay,
Does make sense.
So
Power is probably too strong.
You had to have your balls off, basically, right? To be able to do this.
Yeah, or to be what they I can't remember the name in India, but they have a kind of class of person who is intersex, so if they were not actually castrated, they lived on that borderline,
Yeah, as women, but in all but body, basically.
But finally, most of the Galli, as you know, were accused of castrating themselves, but in Rome they considered that to be very low class behavior.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, one thing that's interesting to me is that, because you mentioned earlier on about Montsegur and Richard and you being out there, and obviously Otto Rahn, who was an explorer, writer, I guess an archaeologist of a type, and but he was commissioned by the Nazis or made to join, I think, but from what I can ascertain, and he ended up working under Himmler, going into Grail territory in France, trying to find the Holy Grail. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So this idea, like, the links back to Templarism, and further back, obviously, the Templars maybe having these secret stories that the Holy Grail was this black rock that they'd learned from when they went out to the Middle East as part of the Crusades, from various different types of traditions. Obviously trying to find what the real source of, I guess, the first religion, the first spiritual moments, the first actual, worship or veneration of a godhead. And that was this black stone. And wherever that may come from, I mean, from what I can ascertain, like when you read people like Nicholas Roerich, it's they believe it's Sirius, the origin, via some weird translation via Orion. Don't really. Do you know anything about that? Where do you think the stone came from?
Me personally, I have no idea. I don't know.
Me either, but the Roerich stuff, like, because he's obviously believed that he had elements of the stone and had brought them to across the Himalayas and through Europe, and then resulted in taking it to New York, where he kept it in the Roerich Museum privately. And then the stories that Jesuits broke into the museum and tried to steal it, And I think maybe, did they steal it? I can't remember what the story is, but then Roerich, obviously you got this idea that these black stones relate back to Montsegur potentially, and the Grail legends there. And there was occult groups in the interwar period trying to channel the ancient Templar Knights of Montsegur, and the Polaires channeled 9 original Templar Knights, who apparently told them that the secrets may be found on these palm leaves manuscripts that might be hidden in the walls of Montsegur. Weirdly, the Polaires had the 6-pointed star as their symbol. And then going back to Nicholas Roerich, obviously, he was aware of everything that was going on in Europe with these things. Then he enters America, maybe 10 years later, and starts to assist people like the vice president at the time, Henry Wallace, who was the main funder for the work of Andrea Puharich and the channeling of the 9. So Polaires were channeling the 9, and they were represented as the original Templars. Throughout quite a few links back to that, you then end up in America in the 50s, 60s, and then they're channeling the 9 who call themselves the Hoovens and have the same symbol as the Polaires. And the Hoovens are the same ones that apparently were talking to Uri Geller and also to Jack Sarfati. And that takes us back to how we met via Jack Sarfati. Weird, eh? It's so strange.
Full circle.
But, full circle, yeah. But so much, and this is another thing, and this will be the next thing, that ufology, modern ufology, is the Grail myth underneath layers and layers and layers of modern narrative. And I think a lot of what we see and a lot of the people involved probably know that. Yeah, that's my take on it anyway. And I've got no proof of that, but it appears to be that for me.
No, I think that there's probably a lot of prominence in the Grail myth and things in the sky. I think there's always that entity from the sky, whatever that is. It's a sky, entity that's bestowing knowledge, right? That's coming either through the White Lady, through orbs, through whatever, through astronomical events, right? Comets, meteors, like whatever, big flashes in the sky, things like that always happen. If you look at Fatima, what was that big deal? It was another White Lady. The thing in the sky came out in the middle of a rainstorm and everything dried up. It was 30,000 people or 50,000 people saw the ball of light, basically dry everything out, the entire area, and then go back up. And so there's always that connection between the sky, water, the moon. Yep. My camera just went crazy again. All those things.
Dynamic when it does that. It looks like you're in a movie when that happens.
Right. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's it,
Yeah. Amanda, I've got a question for you, and it relates a little bit back to Nicholas de Beer. Okay. Have you heard of kind of an offshoot of the dragon line called the Cult of Anku?
I have not.
Well, honestly, I'm going to send you some links. I think you're going to be fascinated by this, but it ties everything into Anku being part of the mystery school stuff that would have entered into Europe at some point in antiquity, where they were, using the symbolism of the Ankh. The Anku, etymologically then becomes Anjou, and then on to the Angevins.
Interesting.
And apparently, one of the divinities involved in all this in Brittany in antiquity was Hathor.
Oh gosh, okay, that's a whole other topic for another day.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, I read about this a while back and I kind of forgotten about it, because I read so much, but I remember reading it and being blown away by it at the time. But then today I was digging and I was like, I came across it again and I was like, this is nuts because it ties so much together. Yeah, etymologically it ties to Anjou. So you get into, if people don't know what I'm talking about, it's René d'Anjou and his mother, who were back in the, I don't even know what century it'd be, the 11th century, were connected to what would have been the mythical Priory of Sion, and other types of orders, which then linked to people like Joan of Arc. They were kind of like her sponsors as a family. And then some of the weird experiences I've had investigating that with, numerology, which is all part of another story. We'll have to do this on another chat if we ever do one. But yeah, it all sort of seems to tie into, there's a code running through these people using numerology that ties a lot of these names together and a lot of these narratives, and it's kind of like Kabbalistic magic, I think. You know what I mean? I'll have to go into it deeper another time, but yeah, it's crazy. And I think that these are some of the secrets that people have known about for a long time, that destinies can be mapped using number, and that most of what we see in existence is number and math and everything, basically. And if you can see behind that, you can almost write narratives and write the future and control what may happen. But I don't know how you do that because I'm not trained in any of that, but I sort of started to get a glimpse of it, and it's intriguing me. And so this linked back to the Anjous and their court, which weirdly also included like the descendants of or the ancestors of Nostradamus in the same court. And so it's like all the modern prophets and things like that people talk about nowadays, like all links back to this same court in France, where possibly was the birthplace or the amalgamation of societies into what became the Priory Sire.
Yeah,
a lot. Sorry, go on. Yeah, go
on. One of my ancestors, well, a few of my ancestors were involved in that. Yeah. In the Andrew bloodline and the Priory, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's probably exactly why you are where you are, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, and I know we kind of glossed over it, and maybe you can't say, but what exactly are they looking for when they're looking genetically or through the blood? Is there a significant marker that they're looking for that jumps out that says, oh yeah, you have this, then that?
That's a good question. Obviously, until recently, we didn't have genetic research. And so what I was told is they would simply look for abilities within families. And that was considered to be the key.
The marker.
And I think that still happens. I mean, I think I can speak about this publicly. I'm sure you're familiar with Jon Majerowski.
Yeah.
Well, when I did the conference with Diana, he was speaking as well at the conference, and also Whitley Strieber was. And he was invited to speak because I've been speaking with Diana about my genetic theory. And my genetic theory about this is that I was always curious as to why with my encounters I never had a bad reaction, because so many people do. They get conjunctivitis, they get ill, they get cancer. I mean, the stories.
Yep.
And I've had 13 physical encounters with this being, so how come I haven't had physical illness as a result? And like I say, I've never read anything about the phenomenon. And I was at a friend's house and picked up a book about Skinwalker Ranch. Happened to just open it, and there was a page where it was speaking about one of the visitors who had her shoulder grazed by a blue orb. And 2 weeks later, she developed a severe autoimmune disease. And I just thought, well, how did that happen? And I thought, well, obviously what happened is she had such an alien imprint into her energy field that her body had an allergic reaction that then turned into an autoimmune reaction. So her body could not fight the absolute difference in whatever this transfer was that she received from being grazed by the orb. And so I thought about that, and then I had a conversation with a guy who studies orbs out in Canada, and he shared with me a document from somebody in the field. It's a classified document, and they were speaking about orbs and how they had observed quantum data transfer between orbs and human beings.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I thought about that, and I thought, well, how come I have had all these experiences and never had an autoimmune reaction, but that woman did? Is it the fact that the orb was blue? Sometimes Chris Bledsoe has said some of these orbs are not good, But that aside, I thought, well, the only explanation that I could come up with is that someone in my ancestry had also had an encounter, and their DNA had already been changed, because what happens with something like that is that the person who receives the imprint has the autoimmune reaction, but then their descendants don't. Their DNA has already been changed to such a degree that they can have contact experiences without having...
You're immune.
You're immune, but not only are you immune, I think you are also selected.
It's like getting bit by a poisonous snake a little bit at a time, and then you don't really die, but then you can get bit by
That's right. Yeah. And I think it then stays in the DNA, this type of I don't know what to call it, but imprint. So I think not only then are you less likely to get sick from the encounters, but you're also more likely to have them.
And then communicate, probably.
That's right.
When I
And so I
when I
shared
had my
this. Sorry, can I
sorry,
just?
go on.
Yeah, I shared
Yeah,
this theory with Diana Pasulka, and that's the reason why she then invited Jon Ramirez to speak at the conference about his knowledge of the genetic research that the CIA were doing. And they were actually doing fake blood tests on people and gathering DNA. I think this was in the 70s and the 80s, and studying long term who was having these experiences and reporting them. And he said that Nordic people, Celtic people, and Native people in America are the ones reporting the most experiences. Yeah, so the way I met Jack Sarfati is that I sent one of my students to Montsegur, and he had an encounter with the White Lady. And when he met Jack, because he's also a physicist, Christoph, Jean-Luc, that's how, you met Christoph. And when he met Jack said that he'd like to communicate with me because of Christoph telling him about my experiences with the lady. And my first email to Jack was about this genetic theory. Yeah.
right.
They've paid attention to this idea. So I don't know, it's just a theory right now, but something happens. And when we consider what that person in the classified document said about the transference, quantum data transfer between the orb and the human being observed, I think it has some validity, perhaps.
I honestly, like, what's weird, right, is when I first had, as an adult, one of these experiences, and I saw a UFO and everything. Yeah, what's weird was I then developed alopecia, and at the time, which is an autoimmune response, right?
Oh gosh,
Like,
I don't think you told me about this.
Yeah, it's nuts. Like, I had a full beard as well at the time, just disappeared in chunks. Like, and then recently, last year, when I was researching Montsegur and, well, it was Fedosi I was researching. It took me to the polaires, and I was starting to touch on this Grail stuff. And I had that very strange experience doing that. And I get kind of manic with it when I get onto something that feels real. It's like it's taken out of my hands, and I'm just on this runaway train of research. But the same thing happened. Half my moustache fell out, yeah, like, just disappeared. And it seems to be this thing where, like, I get alopecia, and the bottom half of my legs, all the hair fell out too. Crazy. It all grew back like within a month or two, but like baby bald. Yeah, like this whole part of my mustache was gone. The first time it happened, this chunk like that, and it was baby smooth, like there'd never been hair there. And I went to the doctor, and they went, "This is an autoimmune response." And they checked my thyroid and stuff, but I was fine. I was clean bill of health, but it all tallied with, I guess, paranormal experiences or alien experiences or whatever it may be. I was taking them as spiritual experiences, but yeah, I had like alopecia from it. It's crazy. And these photographs, I'll send them to dig them out, like just chunks missing, just gone.
That's really interesting, because that kind of correlates, doesn't it, to this idea that it can create autoimmune conditions in people. And I have a friend who had an encounter, and she got burns all the way down the side of her body, and she still has the scars to this day.
Well, there's something going on, right? And it's
so there's a physical evidence and markers. All those things can be tracked. You can have before and after, or after and whatever. I mean, that's probably what they're doing, studying. Nolan and those guys. I'm sure they're doing that. I mean, they're looking at bloodlines, they're looking at experiencers, and they're looking at brain differences and patterns and changes. And they said a lot of it, the brains show in MRIs of trauma, some type of trauma, like experiencers have like an autoimmune or a trauma response, kind of like in the gray matter, I guess. They can see that look like you got hit in the head. Maybe I don't know what it means, but yeah, something
How
like
could
that.
we not have a trauma response
Of
having
course,
experiences like this?
right.
Especially in a world that tells us it's not true.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
yet
that's it, because
the higher up you go, I'm sure you know, the more you realize actually the people who do know that this is not made up, this is real.
Yeah.
And the real question is, what does it mean for us as human beings when we consider the reality that we are not alone? And that is, one of the messages the lady continually tells us, that we are not alone, and we are not the only species of conscious being on this planet that can communicate in this way.
Which is fun.
Hey?
I think it's fun.
Yeah, no, I do too. It is fun, but like, I mean, going back to again to like circling it back to your past. I mean, when I was doing some reading earlier on this week, I found that when the Dragon Court was re-establishing itself under Nicholas de Vere, he was messing around with early DNA testing, and he believed he'd found an element in DNA which showed people who had.
Yeah, that was R1B, I think it's called. Yeah, there were a number of different genetic claves that he found, but that's one of them. And in the end, before he passed away, he had done so much about this that he said, actually, I no longer need to do DNA tests. I just know. And so that kind of fell out of favor a little bit with people in the Dragon Court after he passed. Yeah.
Okay.
And also one of the things that Nick was very kind of passionate about was that people should use their abilities, but use them for good. And he said, it's no good having these bloodlines if you don't do something with them that, it's going to be not only selfish in nature.
Makes sense.
That's like that Carl Jung quote that I sent you yesterday from Flying Saucers, where it's like, the lady, when she sees you, they know about you already, from wherever they're from, their world, and they're just waiting to see what you're going to do with that knowledge or that ability. So it's almost kind of like, you've been tasked with something, and it's trying to find out what that is and how to put it into practice. And that's a big part of the question, I know, for me and stuff, and where you just become kind of confused by all this. Oh, what do you need from me? But then you find yourself on a quest, and it is like you become Parsifal. It's like you start off as like this kind of fool, going from literally the fool, like going from thought to thought, to adventure, trying to find your way, never knowing the way, always getting lost, always getting confused, then finding a little nugget, and then you follow that, and it's just it becomes like a life's work. And I wonder if that's simple as that, like pursuing the quest. Is that enough? I don't know.
It's what I've been doing for the past 10 years since it started for me. And this is the longest time I've really been in one place, since this whole thing began, because of following those signs in that way. And I do believe that is correct, what you say. It's in the journey. It's in we're never given the whole picture. We're given pieces of the jigsaw, I think. And do you know, I think you do know the author Andrew Collins, because I gave you that book of his. But Andrew described it very well to me. He calls them N beings. And he said that when you are a person of destiny and an angel of fate, these beings keep an eye on you if you have something, special that they want you to achieve or do. And if you agree, then you have kind of what you could be called a kind of charmed life, is the way he describes it in his own case, through his own encounters and through, agreeing to do what they ask.
All right. Well, I'm on that quest. I guess my life's pretty charmed. Like, it depends on how I wake up in the morning, I suppose, about how I look at it. But I guess it is, I don't know. It's a tough one. like I said,
you always feel like you got to be doing something. You always feel like you got to be doing something more. Something has to be there. And I think that part of it is, for me, is just to realize that whatever you're doing right now is what you should be doing. Don't get all bent out of shape about, oh, I should be out in the mountain proclaiming all this shit like that or whatever. Right? I don't know. I mean, I got a dumb podcast.
That feeling? Do you get that feeling, John? You get that feeling that you should be doing more?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I do as well.
But I've always.
Well, why we're all sat here now talking about it. Like, it's got to be a reason that we all come together. You know, like it does feel like a mission. But if that mission is purely just keeping that flame alive by having an interest in it, researching, talking, is that enough? Because breathing life into ethereal beings is a matter of accepting they're real and talking about them as if they're real, and then they are real. And I believe that, you know. So part of it is almost kind of like breathing life into them by having an interest in them and pursuing that interest. An idea.
It is, and then the same part is don't feel. I think personally, and my experience is, don't feel that you're not enough, or you're not doing the right thing, or you're not in the right space, or you could be doing more. And I think that's the drive, I think, that keeps us going. But the other part of it is like, you're exactly where you need to be, and you're doing exactly what you need to do, and just let it roll. And that's really hard, especially for me. You know, for Americans, they're just always like, we gotta, you know, and you know, it's hard to just be like, okay, this is it. You know, try to enjoy this moment that you have, this subtle, you know, these minutes that you have here. You know.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is to get the message out there, like you are doing. You know, this broadcast, if one person has helped by knowing that these things are real, by hearing these stories, by feeling like they're not alone in these experiences. Because I think one of the worst things for all of us has been that feeling, you know, what on earth has happened to us and why. And we are now set aside and set apart from, you know, the average ordinary person who doesn't have these experiences. And so I think before the internet, we couldn't find each other. Now we have this amazing technology and this opportunity to broadcast to others. And I think this is part of what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, we're part of the call. We're calling, or at least we're broadcasting our what it is. And I think by just having the conversations that, you know, we talked early on a little bit about, like, you know, people disparage you and they make you feel bad about it, and, you know, think that it didn't happen. But the more people are out there from all walks of life, from everywhere, saying they had these experiences, that they are real, and then also to correlate experiences from different times and continents and people of the same entity, you know, of the same things, you know, and like, how do you look at that throughout history and then even now, and the ability to reach the entire world? I think that's probably maybe part of our mission, just to get it out there and say, this is real. It's okay. It's okay to talk about it. You can do it.
That's right. Destigmatize the whole thing and make people aware that they're not alone.
But I mean, what's interesting about it, though, is that the way that we're coming at this conversation is the reason that it might be unpalatable for some people is because we tie it into, I guess, aliens or the occult or things that are, for a lot of people, are very odd. If we came at it as good Catholics, talking about Marian apparitions and the Blessed Virgin Mother,
everything will be okay.
We'd have people all going, yes, that's absolutely right. You're coming in from a different slant, it all becomes almost like a taboo topic, which is so strange. It's like one element of the paranormal, Christianity and Abrahamic faiths, and then this black side of the paranormal, and it's already in a taboo area. It's crazy. It's wild what becomes acceptable, because the paranormal elements in Christianity, especially things something like Catholicism, are equally as wacky as everything we're talking about, if not more so. Yeah, and they all play into what we're talking about anyway. Like, I mean, that's the other side of it. It's kind of like, I remember I read a great quote a while back where it was kind of like, you know, I got into ufology, or I saw a UFO and got into ufology. 5 years later, I'm a Sufi master, and I've learned all about the alchemical works of the masters, you know. And it's like, so you go from being somebody who's got a normal day-to-day sort of existence, like no interest in any of this stuff. You have one experience, and then a few years go by and you're a completely different person, and the things you've learned off that one experience are immense. I mean, like, I didn't know anything about the history of European dynasties. I didn't know anything really about religion, theology. Yeah, I knew the basics, but these experiences over my life have opened me up to theology, philosophy, history, and it's like they make you, whether I'm smarter or not, but I've got the more of an ability to want to learn and better myself, and that's something I didn't have before. Before that, I was just a regular guy. Went to work, went to the pub, you know, like didn't have any interest about really any of this. So it changes you completely, and kind of just owns you almost, you know. And that's what there's the positives for me. Like I've come out of it, and because I always walked around in my life thinking I was just dumb. Like I was just an NPC. Just you get to work, and I'm not really that smart. But then these things happen, and you suddenly feel like you're getting smarter. And that's what happened to me. I felt like I got smarter from it.
That's good. That's a positive thing.
Yeah, it's a positive thing.
That was a very positive thing. And I feel like I had more of the knowing already, and I just didn't trust it. I didn't lean in. You know what I mean? Like I didn't believe it. Like I already knew these things, or I knew, like, you know, these things, but you can't allow yourself to go, oh, yeah, that's how it is, or duh, that's it. You know, and you just go, nah, that can't be it. You know, but to have the confidence in yourself to know that you're different and that's okay. And lean into it, right?
Well, that's a good message, man. Like that's it, different and that's okay. I mean, that's a great message for everybody. Like, you know, we can't all be the same, and we all have very different experiences, and our life takes strange tangents. And again, it's that idea as well where, like you said, John, you are where you're meant to be. And as soon as I could actually accept that, my life got a lot easier, you know. Like it's almost like you're on this little train and you think you might be in control of it, but you're not. And as soon as you accept that you're not in control, things maybe gets a little easier in life, you know. In my mind, anyway. Maybe not in my physical body, but in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess is that what you'd call an awakening? I don't know. I guess so. But it's a complete change in my being, you know, like in
well, you know what's a really good, and Amanda might have, you may agree with me on this at all, but like going through initiatic orders too, so going through Masonry and you know, Rosicrucianism and all these other things, right? Going through the initiatic order also does that to people. Well, and to me anyway, from my experience and from speaking to other people, that you also have that type of awakening, and it may be subtle, and it may be, you know, not as you know, immediate as it is to have an experience with, you know, an entity or seeing things in the sky. But I feel like it's almost the same in a way, where you have this experience going through initiatic order, where you come out the other side of, you know, you survived it, you know, you learned things and you've gone through things and you kind of are more awakened. Amanda, I
completely agree. Yeah, completely agree. Like I can never go back. Like you can't go back in the box.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I know. Like when you begin on the initiatory path, as you will know, that's it. You're on the path. It's like impossible to change your mind then. It's just there. It's part of you.
And to me, it always felt like it always was. And I just kind of like opened the door, you know, like opened the window and, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think when the initiation rituals were crafted, well, obviously whoever crafted them, or whatever groups of individuals crafted them, knew exactly what they were doing and how it was going to affect your psyche afterwards, yeah? What is it, like a perfect combination in terms of how it's going to affect the way you think?
I don't know. I mean, I was often thought about where it all originated from. And, you know, some of the degrees in Masonry, there are, you know, there was a bunch of, like, you know, the history of them, like this was created in the 1800s because these guys did this. And it's just like, okay, cool. That's kind of a fun little thing, but it's not, you know, the original ones or whatever. But in my mind, I almost think that they tried to recreate what happened to them, in my mind.
100% agree. That has been my theory after having been part of these initiatory orders as well. They were basically creating contact or reproducing their own experience and how they achieved that.
Right. and then tried to mimic it. Right. It's the same. It kind of goes back to what's the Lavinda wrote about it and talked about in the Secret Machines books. It's the oh God, I can't remember. It's where in World War II we landed planes and we built a runway, and then that group of indigenous people never saw that before, and then
Cargo culture.
cargo culture.
Like a cargo cult, yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like a cargo cult in the sense that happened to them. So like, well, we want this to happen again. How did this happen? Let's do the yeah. Right. In my mind, I think, I don't know. I mean, that feels like it like that because some things just don't make any sense, but other things do, you know? So it's like, oh.
As an outsider, it seems like from what I've read, like maybe, I don't know about later stages, but there's a quite strong correlation with the concept of death and rebirth.
Oh, yeah.
So, and in closed spaces, which again, I guess takes you back to rites of Eleusis, going all the way back to that, like caves, underground systems, and the idea of death being like changing I guess it's the death of the ego in it through these underground rituals and consumption of entheogens and so on and so forth, breaking down the human body and rebirth. Is that kind of what a lot of it represents, do you think?
A lot of
Is that how it changes? Yeah. I mean, I guess you can't tell me. So.
Well, I mean, it's not a secret that, I mean, at least in Masonry anyway, that the soul is eternal, is, you know, that's kind of one of the messages it gets across, is that your soul is eternal and that, you know, you can't die. I mean, in that sense, right? So what do you do with your life then with that knowledge? Your soul's eternal and you can't die. What you got to make the most of everything you can right now to make the world a better place, I guess. That's what I got of it. To, you know, but you drop that fear and you release that from your ego, your mind, or your conscious thoughts all the time. Then what? I mean, it's everybody walks around worrying that they're not going to die. Oh shit, I'm going to do this. I'm going to die. I'm going to do this. I'm going to die. Like everybody's going to die, but just to know that your soul's eternal and that, you know, you do matter. I mean, that's kind of a big weight off your shoulder, right? Well, shit, we're all going to die. Nobody gets out alive.
It helps. It helps.
It would help,
yeah,
right?
Like, removing the fear of death from life, like, it's going to make your life a lot more enjoyable.
Palatable.
So many of us hide from death and that concept, and when it comes along, it's a massive tragedy both to the person that dies and the people around them, because they're not prepared for it, and their concept of it is, especially in the modern age where so many people are atheist in their belief systems,
right?
And they believe that's it. So all that they're heading towards is the ultimate end. Yeah? Literally, you're just going to be dust. And I used to think like that for years. Like, I was a full-blown atheist. Like, that's how I saw things. It was just like, this is it. Like, but one thing I was confused. I think I've said this before on one of our chats, but always confusing me with atheists that they don't just go out there and have the very best carefree lives that you can imagine. Because if you really believe this is your only shot, why would you want to go and fill out spreadsheets for minimum wage, or why would you want to go and unblock drains and stuff? I don't know, man. Like, you just want to have like the best time ever, right? Surely the most rewarding time ever. And like, I don't get it. It's strange, like the cult of atheism, because I don't know why people still allow themselves to be put in like a virtual prison almost, when if they really think this is all they've got. I don't know. I guess that's brainwashing.
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. My friend John was an atheist, and he's not anymore. And he had my last podcast, we talked about it. But so that was a different thing to know that there's something out there, you know. I think there really is. And whatever that is, I mean, it's probably been called a billion things through a billion years, through a billion people, but it's there. You know, but the white lady thing still really intrigues me, because of the Native Americans, you know, their tradition as well with the white lady, you know, that she came down and taught. You guys don't know that one? Do you know the lady came down and she taught
the Hopi Indians.
Yeah, there was a couple different, actually it was I think it was a bunch of different, almost all of them had the experience with a lady in white who came down. She brought the peace pipe. It was one of the things, and there was like 7 other things that she gave, and she taught man all these things, and that she would return again, you know, and all this stuff. So it's interesting to see that same type of correlation through cultures too, right? So it's not only European cultures, it's actually Native American indigenous culture too, to see that there's a white lady that showed up to him.
Was she called White Buffalo Woman?
That's it. Yep.
That's it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
had heard that. Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things that I found when I met Richard and went down to that part of France is that one of the earliest pieces of Neolithic art ever created was a woman's head, and it's a white woman's head made out of a mammoth's tusk.
Whoa.
And when you see the actual face, the shape of the face does not look like human. It looks like what we would call an alien.
Wow.
And she has a very strange headdress on. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and the knowledge of the lady from that part of France, those caves, those ancient people, me and Richard both are convinced that this is not new. You know, she has been here since the beginning. And we both believe as well that she was helping our ancestors during these times of natural catastrophes, you know, when they had to take refuge in these different places because of the weather and so on. And Ingo Swann speaks about in the book The Apparitions of Mary about how she always appears at a time of great crisis. That's right, exactly. And I think one of the reasons is because she wants us to know that we are not alone, and also that she can help. And and she does.
Well, I think that it's just becoming so much more real for me over the last few years, because, you know, like we've all said, you question yourself when you first have these experiences. I know I do. I thought I'd lost my mind, you know, but it was beautiful though. Like, it was like 2 weeks of insanity after my visitation, and but the best 2 weeks ever for me. I was just walking around going, I'm literally the happiest I've ever been. I can see things I couldn't see before. I can feel things I couldn't feel before. Like, it lasted about 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, I think most of my friends and family were about ready to have me sectioned into a psychiatric hospital. So I was pretty glad I was actually gutted when it stopped. I remember every day in that period waking up in the morning and going, it's still there. I still feel like.
Amanda, did you have that? You've had 13. Did you have that? Was that your ride too?
In my first experience, I was very emotional. I mean, I cried the entirety of the next day, pretty much.
Wow.
And then I felt stigmatized, like I said.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have an encounter again after that first one until I went to Montsegur with Richard. And one of my encounters there was again very similar to one of Chris Bledsoe's encounters, in that the lady appeared on the side of the mountain and she was flanked by two other beings, and I wasn't quite sure if they were holding her or protecting her. I'm still not sure to this day, but she had a particular hand gesture that she had this kind of hand gesture that she was holding, and in this instance she was wearing a conical hat and a conical dress. And that's the thing, every single experience that I've had, she's looked completely different. And so that was that experience, and that was incredibly overwhelming because she was huge in that particular experience. And Richard was there and he saw this as well. And then after that, it was strange because I started to feel what I can only describe as like possession type states, in which she would come into me, and I remember once holding my hand in that gesture for like hours, for example, when I was speaking what she was saying to Richard. And we were living up in this mountain, this very sacred place, and so everything was heightened anyway. And our lives were devoted to this type of work, so it's not like we were going out and doing a day job. This was our entire life,
right.
You know. So we had the time, I suppose, as well, and the openness to facilitate this. And then one of the most intense experiences that I had with her in Montségur was, again, I was taken up. I didn't know that this could be considered an abduction experience because I'd never read anything about it, but I was taken up above the castle and looking down could see the lady. And this was during the siege of Montségur.
Mm.
It was like I was being shown what happened back in time.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a human woman who was singing. Now, that's another thing that people don't know, but the lady is often singing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not any kind of human sound. And in this particular encounter, this human woman was singing, and she was singing while the chateau was being besieged. And I was watching all the violence that was happening, and she was sitting in the tower room watching and singing and crying. But what I don't know whether she was aware, but the lady was standing right behind her, and it was the lady who was singing through her.
Wow.
And one of the stories about Montségur, as Jean-Luc was mentioning, is about Esclamande de Foix, the high priestess of the Cathars, and how she, in a way, became synthesized with the lady, I think. And Richard and I have both come to this conclusion that she was a human woman, but she became a vessel for the lady to such a degree that they became one almost.
Mm-hmm.
And they say when Esclamande died that she transfigured, that she turned into a dove and flew over Mount Tabor, and her body was never found.
Whoa.
And so, again, we have this kind of divine feminine, but it's a human woman who is a vessel for this other being. And I think, without wanting to sound weird, that's what was starting to happen to me when I was living there.
Mm-hmm.
And in that particular experience, I could see the lady without her veil, but it was at a distance, and her face was flickering. It was really strange. And it was like she had a million different faces, and they kept changing repeatedly. And then it started to slow down. And as it slowed down and started to become one face, I honestly felt like I was about to die looking at her.
Wow.
I thought, that's it, I'm dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because her face was so exquisitely beautiful that I thought if I looked upon her for a second, I would just die there and then on the spot. And other people who have encountered her there in Montségur have said the same thing, that when they looked upon her, they thought they were going to die. And again, she was at a distance from me in this particular experience. And it was a very strange experience. And not long after that, I was in the mountain with one of my students, and it was a full moon again, because these encounters always happen on a full moon. And we were walking up the mountain, but he was finding it extremely hard to walk. And he was very, very fit. He'd just been hiking Machu Picchu, but he could not lift his legs. So every couple of meters, we'd have to stop, and I would have to say a prayer to open the gates so we could get up another few meters, and then we'd have to stop and repeat the same process. And when we got to the Camp de Cromat, which is where they say the Cathars were burned, we were sitting on a bench, and we were talking about Esclamande. And every time I mentioned her name, we would hear a rustle behind us in the woods. And my friend, he was French and a little bit cynical, and I kept saying, look, and he was saying, no, it's a pig. And I said, no, pigs don't come up this high, this is not a pig. And anyway, we carried on the conversation, and the third time I said Esclamande, the lady appeared behind us and physically touched me on the back, and he had hold of my arm, and we both were propelled off the bench. And we just caught a glimpse of her in that instance, and then she disappeared into the woods. But there's a physical touch. Whoa. And he felt it as well. And then after that, there was, this was in March 16th, 2019, and Richard and I had just come back from making Color App Space, and we went to Montsegur to the Country Comat for the Cathar memorial service. And after the service, I went up into the woods to that same location. And that was when she appeared behind me. And she, like I said, I'd never seen her face up close. And then this time round, she said to me, if you would look upon my face and live, you must cleanse from your heart all anger, fear, hatred, self-doubt, and desire for revenge. And Richard and I had just been talking that day about what happened to the Cathars and how so many people have this feeling of wanting revenge, you know, for the things that were done to them. And at the time I was thinking, but I don't have those things, you know. It's like, I'm not sitting here thinking about revenge, you know. It's very kind of curious as to why that was said to me. And then this column of light appeared coming out of the mountain and just went up my entire body and was running up and down my body in the same way, actually, as she scanned me that first day, in the same direction. And it washed through my entire body until I could feel all of these energetic imprints that were in my body that I didn't know were there, just washing away, like emotions I didn't know were there, washing away in this energy. And then when I was completely empty, is the only way I could describe it, in this state of neutrality, she then walked into my body from behind and merged with me. And that was the most intense experience of them all, because in those moments I got to see the world through her eyes. And the feeling was of this immense compassion and awareness of all of our suffering, but at the same time, this immense neutrality as well. And I could feel that somehow everything was perfect and exactly as it was meant to be, all of it, even our pain, even our suffering, and that she was aware of that as this higher level being and knew that, but at the same time, it was weird, neutrality and immense compassion at the same time. It was really, really weird.
Like the world's the empathy of the world. Yeah,
that's right. I've never felt anything like it in my life, and suddenly my conscious mind kicked in, and I thought to myself, oh, I'm being possessed here. And the minute I had a moment of fear, that was it. The connection was gone and she stepped out. But in those seconds that happened, it was an incredible blessing, and very profound.
That's amazing.
And I've been trying to hold to those principles ever since.
It's great. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all that. That's so cool. That really is cool.
Very personal experience.
The one thing that jumped out, sorry, Jean-Luc, the one thing that jumped out to me is that when I had the experience with the lady, she had two cloaked entities next to her. And they were, I told Jean-Luc, and I think I've said this a couple of times, different podcasts, but I felt like they were her henchman is a shit word. It's almost like these are my bodyguards.
I've got goosebumps all over. I think that's absolutely accurate, what you've just said.
Henchman that's a shit word, but they're like, these are my guys, and if you don't do what I say, then these guys are here. And they didn't want to be there, is the other feeling I got, that they were like, fuck, I don't want to do this either. They were kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, come on, dude. You know, take the sword. You know what I mean? Because they were just kind of like, oh yeah, we're here too. Like, you know, like.
This is so interesting, because something I haven't shared, and I haven't even told John this yet, I don't think. Did I tell you this, John, on the phone the other day about my encounter with the three beings the other day in relation to Jack?
Yeah, you did. You did.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think those cloaked beings, John, that you experienced, I met them about a week ago. And they said they were servants of the lady. And yes, they also didn't particularly seem like they wanted to be here.
Damn it. So it is true.
The worst thing
Yeah.
to be in a mob like.
They
Wow.
literally said that they were servants of the lady and that they protect what is dear to her.
There you go. That's kind of the feeling I got. But like, I really don't want to be here and hurt you or do bad things to you, but I'm here because I have to be, kind of a thing.
What did they look like?
It's it sounds so cliche, but it's the only way I can describe it in any type of modern context would be, what the hell's the name of that? What's the video game that everybody plays? The guy with the cloaked. What is it? Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
It was like that, but like a dark blue or like a royal, like really.
Oh, blue.
Yeah, like
Wow.
a dark blue. Almost like it was so dark blue, it was almost purple, kind of a thing. But like a cloaked. I could see, this part, right? It was cloaked, and I could tell it was a human, right? But it was just like everything was cloaked like that, right? And it was definitely a form. I got the impression they were male, or that was the energy. It was just kind of like a, standing there like, oh.
Was
But
that blue a bit electric blue in sort of color? Very dark, but kind of electric-y blue.
It was like a, I don't know. I'm wearing like, this is blue, but it looks black. But it kind of, it kind of felt like a, I don't know. I felt like the color meant something.
Yeah, because these ones I saw had a blue tint to them. They were white light like the lady, but they have blue, and that's the first time I've seen that.
Yeah, they felt like they had whatever that meant. And it sounds dumb, but it meant like lieutenant, sergeant, whatever. You know what I mean? It felt like that was the color of their station or something. I don't know what that means.
That makes sense because these guys told me their name. The two at the back were called the Sentinels.
There it is. That sounds really familiar. The Sentinels, yeah. Yeah. Watching, yeah. But I got the feeling they really didn't want to do anything to me. I got a feeling they were there to kind of intimidate me into taking the sword, and that if I didn't, that with the idea of them there was to like be the intimidation for me to kind of do it, because it was.
I felt very intimidated by these beings, even though they were giving me a message for Jack. I definitely felt very intimidated, so I can understand that.
With the Stryber, when he had his experience, said that there was two different types of beings, and one of them was he associated with Ishtar, and that was the boss, female figure, and the ones around were little blue helpers. Do you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's in the book Communion. He basically says it quite explicitly that the entire experience was feminine in its origin. That the main being was, he believed it to be Ishtar, like the goddess Ishtar, yeah. And that these other creatures were kind of like her helpers, and they were little blue creatures in hooded robes.
Gosh, I need to read that then.
His experience too, like the main abduction when it took place, was the solstice.
Solstice or equinox, yeah, one of the two, right?
What's funny is, like, because Stryber, he basically is one of the big names over the last however many decades in pushing forward the extraterrestrial narrative. But when you actually read his books, they're all veiled occult stories. Like, so his own book, like the Communion, as I said, like he talks a lot about this feminine entity, Ishtar. He then wrote a fictional book about Roswell, and that's the same. It goes down like a feminine feeling, like a mother goddess, and it gets into, from what I could work out when I was reading it, essentially the rites of Eleusis. So what's happened to people in his version of the Roswell account is an initiatory process involving almost like fairy folk, but again with a female goddess figure, which is basically there to consume you and your ego, to spit you out the other side as something different.
John, can I ask you, what was happening to you before you had your encounter? Where were you when it happened to you?
Here. Me
yeah.
or him?
Talking to me.
You. I know about Jean-Luc's. Yeah, you.
Oh, me? Yeah.
Jon Majerowski, right?
Yeah. So I decided, well, there was a lot going on. I mean, I'd gone through the Rosicrucian grades, like I'd gone through those orders, and then I was doing, like, I did have experiences with orbs with my family, and I had experiences with orbs with my Rosicrucian order by, basically meditating and bringing them down. And so I was really into it. And then at the time, I mean, it was really into the podcast and doing a lot of different talks. And I mean, Jean-Luc and I, we were talking about a lot of things. And it was like, I wasn't a like, oh my God, a tragedy had happened, or it wasn't like a low in my life or anything like that. It was almost like I had I accepted it, or like I was like, well, if something's gonna happen, I don't care. I'm not afraid. Like I lost fear at some point, because that's always a joke around when I started the podcast, because I was afraid before that a white van was gonna come and grab me and tell me to stop talking about UFOs and all this shit, because you can't talk about it. And at one point, I just was so open and free and talking about my previous experiences as a kid, and because just talking to people like we're talking, like I talked about like ghost experiences as a kid and all the weird stuff, and I didn't care anymore because the stigma was gone, and I didn't feel like I had to hide it or be scared of it or give a shit what people thought. And I think it was around that time when it was like, well, I don't care. I mean, that shit happens. It does happen, and other people see it, and it's not just me. And I think that's what it was. I think that's kind of like when it happened. That's kind of was just I really wish I would have like wrote down the day and the time and the moon and the phase and like, but the things that stuck out was that she came to me out of the Northeast. There's a tree there that's a sycamore tree that's kind of there, and it's a big giant white looking tree ish. And she came to me out of the Northeast, came to me across in my backyard, where it's at. And the two guys were there, offered the sword. And I told Jean-Luc, and I don't know if I've said this before, but it felt like that if I took this sword, I'd had to go someplace warm, hot, desert, and that I've done it a billion times, and I've always done it, and I've always been like a wielder or soldier or whatever or something to be able to do this and cleanse something, or just like I felt like I had to destroy a whole bunch of shit again. Like just I have to take this sword, and I have to go not because I want to, because I have to take the sword, and I have to do these bad things because it's for the greater good or whatever. And it's just like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it again. Too bad. I'm not going to do it. I felt like if I took that I would have to go do it again. And I was like, no, I'm just not doing it. And then when I first time, when I said it, or I don't know if it was vocalized or whatever, but I was just like, I'm not doing it. The two guys walked closer. That's where the intimidation came in. Like they were behind her, and they came closer. And I was like, still not going. Like, it's just not happening. And that's when I got the impression of they're like, shit, I don't want to have to do this. They kind of like, with each other, like, man, I don't want to do this, and I don't want to do this either. And it was kind of, and then it was just kind of like, that's it. I'm done. Like, I'm not doing it. Forget it. I have a family. I'm not doing it. And then that was kind of like, that was it. But it didn't leave me with regret or remorse, or I didn't feel defeated, or I didn't feel like I'd won a battle. It was just kind of almost like a stalemate. That's the feeling I got. I was just like, okay, whatever. But I didn't feel better or worse for it. I didn't have any cool experiences afterwards. I mean, I did get to meet a lot of people that had the same experiences, like Jean-Luc. I think I don't know if Jean-Luc, I met you after I had the experience.
I think you had these after we met.
After we met. Okay.
Yeah. I think I'd had my experience when I met you, and I was still kind of like pretty hyper from it, like manic with it all.
It's probably how you found me. It's almost like I feel that's kind of how it worked. That because I don't know. Well, that's how we met somehow. I feel like that's kind of how it came together.
I think that there was definitely that link. It was like a link to. Yeah, I was obsessed with this concept of the lady, and was just trying to find answers. And I think you popped up on some chat about it, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting," because obviously you've got your Rosicrucian, and you're pretty open about that. So I found that, and then I was like, "Well, that's what I think." That's my granddad was a Rosicrucian, and so yeah, I just felt an affinity towards you. Basically, I felt I could speak to you, so that's how we met. In it, it's been a long time. We've been friends a long time.
Yeah, years, man. Years.
a lot of these chats.
Yeah. Well, and the thing with me is like, it's like, I don't know if I don't know. I mean, to me, it seems like it was as real as it was, but then at the same time, it makes me upset that I don't have like the concrete, like you can tell me like, oh, it was March 16th, 2010. Like I had this, it was the full moon and I was at this spot right here on Earth. And I'm just like, this happened. And I remember it shaking me up for a while. And I didn't tell my wife for a little bit because she was already thinking I was, at the same time losing my mind. But anyway, because of, all this. She just kept going, don't get me abducted. Quit doing this shit. I don't want to get abducted. I was like, all right, I'm not doing it. So I wasn't going to about to tell her that the white lady came to me, because then she's like, what the fuck? But, yeah, I remember just being like kind of indignant about it. I was kind of like, I don't feel good and I don't feel bad about it, which is weird.
Well, it sounds like you were given an opportunity to make a decision. And because you had that feeling that you'd already done it so many times before and you didn't want to do it again, you were given the opportunity to say no. And that's one of the things I like about this experience that you're sharing, that you weren't forced into anything. You were given a choice. And that's how she operates. It's always about our free will. No matter what. We have to be open. We have to be willing. And she's not going to force us into anything that we don't want to do, that we won't consent to. Yeah,
that's good. I can say that after that experience, I have been more psychic.
Psychic?
Yeah, I have been more psychic. Yeah.
Change. Hey, John, here's something interesting, right? Your experience was next to a sycamore tree.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were saying, I was like, well, I know there's a connection here to all this. You know who the lady of the sycamore is, don't you?
No. Maybe. Oh, Hathor.
Hathor, yeah.
That's
She's
right.
The lady of the sycamore. Yeah. That's a crazy correlation.
Yeah.
Not really. Hathor keeps coming up again and again and again.
Mm-hmm. And every UFO experience I've had, it's been in the Northeast. And in the sky. Whatever the sky is in the Northeast is where I've seen it and it's come from.
Mm.
What relevance do you think that might have, John?
I don't know. I know in Masonry, the north is the dark part of the lodge where it's so dark, it's so north of the ecliptic that light doesn't pass it, which interests me. That's like basically, I don't know if I said something I shouldn't, but whatever. But basically it's so dark in the north, Occult, that it's dark in the north, right? But that's why that we don't have, like the stations in the lodge are situated cardinally, right? The north, south, east, west. No, I mean east, everything but north, right? So there's officers in the lodge that are all the cardinal directions except for north, and they call it the dark part of the lodge, which to me I've always been fascinated with. And I'm like, well, why not bring the light to the north? But it's weird. It's just the Northeast. I don't get it. I'm still searching for those answers. I don't know.
That might be where the Black Madonna comes from and the black stone.
Could be.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Then you sort of get into this idea like the North Star would be when you're starting towards the pole star, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The polar tradition, like the polaires, like what some of what the Tula Society were doing after. There's a group called the Landig Group who talked about a lot of what we've been talking about, but they talked about things like the food fighters of World War II being what you call Manasolas. Manasola has been a Cathar term, I think, for healing energy. Manasola being the soul of Manichaeism. They started talking about that and then saying that these lights, they were called, like what the polaires ended up calling the little lights, which were like kind of astral figures or some sort of communication with the astral. But yeah, this Landig group, which were the successors, I suppose, openly of the Tula Society, they compared everything to the Cathar faith, which is probably, which came off the back of Otto Rahn and so on and so forth. But yeah, like all the terminology is Cathar stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All the stuff they were talking about, it all ties into this again. And it's like, which is where it's fascinating me, is these connections to your life and Monsker and the Cathar stuff, and then looking at some of the correlations into what's been going on with like Chris Bledsoe and and some of the people around him, if you follow about maybe what they're interested in, again, it's the same sorts of movements, Templars, Neo-Cathars, it's all there.
Rosicrucians.
Yeah.
Rosicrucians. Well, apparently I was reading that, whether he was real or not, but was it Nicholas Rosenkreutz?
Yeah, Christian Rosenkreutz. Or
Christian. It's Christian. I think about Nicholas to be it. Christian Rosenkreutz, yeah. So there's an idea put forward by, what's it called? Steiner, that Christian Rosenkreutz was not Albigensian, was a Catholic, and from a Catholic family.
Seems about right.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
I don't know either. There's been theories that there was just a collective of people, the Invisible College, and that they just came up with the Christian Rosenkreutz name that basically was just it was a conglomerate of people that are already doing it in secret, and they wanted to get the word out more publicly, so they created the manifestos to kind of like saying, hey, this is what we can be, this is what we've been doing, and to kind of recruit more people into the Invisible College to kind of get it in the, you don't have to get burned at the stake. You can come talk to us, and we can do these things that we're doing already. There's more of you out there. We know.
That's how I'd always accepted it. And then, but this was interesting because he called him that he was from a line called the Germelhausens.
Oh.
Actually, down to a family name, the Germelhausen line, and being the one that Christian Rosenkreutz originated from, or wherever what we would now know as Christian Rosenkreutz. But they were a family from the regions of France that were associated with Catholicism. But
makes sense.
I don't know. I mean, it's just Steiner, isn't it? So one person saying, well, Steiner's a big name in all this, I suppose.
Well, I think we're kind of the current day manifestos, right? Think about it, like we were saying earlier. Like we're out talking about things that nobody else talks about. We're doing it publicly, and we're making awareness. I feel like we're kind of reliving that whole manifesto era in a way, right? We're doing it. We're talking about things that nobody else talks about. We're practicing things that nobody else has practiced, or we do or have for thousands of years. We've done it in secret. I mean, Amanda and I, right? With different orders and stuff. And now we're coming out going, hey, this is what we're doing. This is it, right? Mm-hmm. And now the next thing is going to happen. This is the witch hunt. And they're going to round us all up and burn us. But if history repeats, right, that's what's going to happen. They're going to come get us and they're going to burn us. And then it's going to be another 1,000 years and we're going to be right back here again. It's going to be it.
I think they're too interested in our DNA to do that this time around. They're going to harvest us first.
There you go. Yeah.
And then they can clone us.
There you go. They can use this.
I wake up one morning with Gary Nolan looking over me in a big syringe. Like, no.
Jesus, that's going to be my next nightmare. Takes the ball off. It's really Gary Nolan. I knew it. Oh, God. Guys, I got to run. I'm so sorry, but it's...
No, we've been on for ages. It's midnight here.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But
we got to do it again, though, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Would you like another one, Amanda?
Definitely.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad that, it's interesting that I haven't heard anybody have the two blue guys yet, so that's interesting.
That's really interesting because that, again, is not something I thought of really, as relevant. So the fact that you had the exact same thing, again, it's the correlation that helps, doesn't it, to know that this is not just happening to us in our individual mind, it's real.
Yeah. What was the message of like a bad message? I mean, you don't have to tell me. I mean, we can cut this part out too, but I mean, like the message you got to give, was it?
No, it was a really good message.
Oh, okay.
About Jack Sarfati and about the fact that I haven't met him yet. And Jean-Luc will know I've tried to meet him 3 times now and it hasn't happened. And part of the reason I was a little bit scared, like you, not wanting the men in black to turn up at my door and tell me off about talking about these things.
Yeah.
But also because it just didn't happen. And I was speaking with Christoph, my kind of student who knows Jack, and I said, I'm really sorry that I never got to meet Jack. And then I said, he's a really good person, even though he's walking in some very dark places with some of these people that he's in contact with. And then I said, I don't know how he does it, because I would feel contaminated if I was to be around these people. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
And in that very instant is when these three blue white beings appeared in my room from the right. It's always from the right for me. And
that's northeast for me too, right there.
Right. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
And they showed me how they take care of Jack, and that they've been with him since he was a child, and that there are these two at the back who are called the Sentinels, and they act like sensors. And whenever negative influences come towards him, they turn and face the negative influence, and they simply shed their light upon it, and it is neutralized.
Whoa.
So it doesn't even get to touch him. And this was happening while I was on the phone to Christoph. So Christoph wrote down everything I was saying in real time while it was happening.
Awesome.
And so the whole thing was documented live.
That's great.
And then the one at the front was the messenger, and that's how he described himself, that he was the messenger who was speaking to Jack even when he wasn't listening.
Makes sense.
So giving him a lot of his inventions and ideas and things like that. And so he was being protected by these three beings. And that's when they said they are servants of the lady, and they protect what is dear to her.
That's awesome. And they were kind of like pissed off to be there.
Yeah, they were really grumpy. They didn't really want to be there at all. And I got that slightly intimidated feeling, because they were this pure masculine energy that was slightly intimidating. It was very, very protective. And I knew they were not there to harm me in any way, but they were to show me how Jack was being protected. And then I was given information from his dead father and directed to find something that his father had written online. And
wow.
Yeah, and that this whole thing, this connection goes through their bloodline, through the father's line. And then I asked Christoph to write to Jack and share everything as it had happened. And then I wrote the next day and gave my side of it. And all he did was wrote, "That's about right," with a smiley face.
That's the thing. It's like with Jack. I've met him a few times now, and he does seem to just have this charmed life. He just seems to skip through life, The sort of stuff that I'd be worried about all the time and stressing about is just la 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 la. I'll just catch playing here and meet these shady folk. I'll catch playing over here and meet these mysterious people. And it's like that, his entire life seems to be like that. There's some massive adventure. And he's really like right in himself, like what comes across online, a lot of people see him as being a bit of a curmudgeonly type, but you actually meet him, he's not like that at all. He's actually quite a friendly fella. He's really quite nice, which is a big surprise. And he's very chill.
He got on the phone with me and was just awesome. He was just, hey, yeah, this is the greatest conversation I had for 2 minutes, and then that was it.
It just seems like he's having a great time, It's like, if somebody's living their life, he certainly is,
Yeah.
But sounds to me like he's been obviously a contactee, and it's from, again, the same group that were probably contacted at Montsegur, the same group that contacted at the Nine, the same group. So yeah, there's something there,
Yeah.
Anyway, that's maybe for the next chat. I'll go to bed, guys.
Thank you so much, everybody. We'll talk to you later on, huh?
See you both. Sleep well.
Yeah.
Have interesting dreams.
Not too interesting, Jean-Luc.
Yeah, not too interesting.
Yeah. Have them dreams. Have a nice sleep. Yeah. Enjoy yourselves.
Bye, guys.
Right. It's good to see you both.
Thank you for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.